At a young age, I realized that I had a very weak mind, and I want nothing to interfere with my own thought process. I want to make sure that every single thing I feel is real. I want no masking. I want nothing to mask my ability to feel fear, to overcome fear.
All the people that I was in high school with and in college with were extremely hard drinkers. And I drank quite a lot till I was 27. And I found that there was no bloody way I could write seriously and think seriously on an ongoing basis if I was hungover. And I got married and I was going to have kids. And I thought, yeah, enough of this. And so on.
To give you a clear description of what life's like as a drug addict is bloody terrifying. I suppose what it is it's a strategy for survival. You find something that works, in my case, for managing my emotional state, and then you keep doing it because, of course, it's physically addictive, but because to a degree the strategy is working. By the time you realise that the consequences of your drug use are worse than the consequences of a life where you don't have an anaesthetic or distractions or pleasure stimulation. By that time, you're physically dependent, and the idea of change, you don't feel like you have any hope. You don't feel like there's any way of stopping. Why would I stop? How would I stop? This is my life now. It becomes your life. It becomes your religion. It becomes the thing that gets you. It becomes your belief system.
I think that everybody should have a self-projection. You have to imagine how you see yourself. And if you see yourself as a superhero and an extremely disciplined and hardworking person who achieves everything he's ever wanted in life and does amazing things, you have to understand that you're not going to be able to do that on drugs. So you need to have a mental projection in your mind of who you think you can be and who you want to be. And if that person's a drug addict, then go be a drug addict. But if that person is an extremely successful, extremely hardworking, extremely intelligent, extremely respected individual, he's probably not going to be doing drugs.
This is what lands us in the most trouble, is just drugs. Everybody in the penitentiary is there for drugs. Every crime is drugs. My crime, drugs. That dude who robbed that place, he robbed it because he was on Oxycontin. Everything stems back to drugs. Literally 99% of people in the penitentiary, it comes back to drugs. And dope, the dope game, or something along the lines of dope. And it's just so real at that moment, how much pain we drag our families through with this bullshit ass selfish behavior. You know how much harder it is to get out than it is to get in? Our negative choices are so much harder to exit than they are to enter.
Weed is one of the most dangerous drugs of all because it halts your ambition. It stops you from being unhappy with your current crap situation. You play your PlayStation, you eat pizza, you smoke your weed. That's a good day. That's a bad day for me. And it's a bad day for you if you minus the weed. I think it's a horribly dangerous drug, and people who smoke it really, really do need to stop. And every single time this comes up, it's, well, Elon Musk. Don't say Elon Musk to me. He doesn't advocate weed. He doesn't even say he smokes weed. He took a puff once on one podcast ever. Now, if you're going to use what's called an argument from authority at me, well, this person's rich and important and blah, blah, so he's a weed guy. One, he's not a weed guy. Two, if you're going to rely on arguments from authority, the smarter, richer person saying something about weed means he's right, then I'm right and you're wrong. Because I'm rich and I'm smart and you're broke and you're dumb and you smoke weed.
Alcohol is a really bad drug. 50% of murders take place in an alcohol-fueled environment. Either the victim or the perpetrator or both is drunk. It's almost the sole cause of domestic abuse. It's almost the sole cause of so-called date rape. It's also the only drug we know that actually makes people more aggressive, not merely because they don't know what they're doing. So yeah, alcohol's bad news, and it can turn perfectly good people into quite the impulsive and dim-witted monsters.
I really don't want my children to pay for my sins or to be afraid for me, which is one of the hard parts of being the child of an alcoholic. Do you think, what if my dad gets drunk? What if he does something stupid?
Because I was addicted to crack and heroin, those drugs cause social problems pretty quickly. You get in trouble with the police, you end up in hospital. It's difficult to ignore. Anyone who's been around people with food addiction issues knows how much pain and chaos that can create in a family. But I suppose you get fast-tracked when you've got a drug problem. But what I've noticed since getting clean from drugs is that the condition itself, the feeling, will migrate and morph onto anything. You can get obsessed with relationships, you can get obsessed with money, you can get obsessed with staring at your screen, watching too much TV, anything that takes you out of yourself.
Everybody out there who's still drinking or smoking and not thinking it's big, just know that's the gateway for your kids to use harder drugs. You're doing it. They're seeing that you're escaping reality, and they don't see no difference between your drink and their pill. Dad still drinks. Mom still has that wine. He sees her out of her mind a little bit on the weekends, and there's the gateway. He's able to justify that the pills he takes aren't that bad, and you gotta get rid of all of them. Escaping reality of any sort is a problem.
70% of people who smoke cigarettes report that they would like to quit if they thought they could. The success rate of quitting smoking when people try to go just cold turkey, just quit with no assistance whatsoever, they might tell their family and friends, hey, I'm quitting, that's it. It's 5%. So 5% of the people that say, that's it, I'm not smoking again, despite cancer diagnosis, I'm not smoking again, despite the fear of the negative health effects, I'm not gonna ever smoke again, despite the financial cost, the health cost, it makes your skin worse, it lowers libido, it disrupts hormones, it disrupts vascular function, brain function, it does all these terrible things, and yet most people who try and quit simply can't. And of the 5% that succeed in quitting, a full 65% of them relapse within a year. So that's a very depressing picture, but it's not to say that people cannot quit. In fact, they can.
My whole life, there's been this unrelenting voice in my head. We all have this voice. It's the right or wrong voice. And a lot of times that voice guides us into comfort. But I have this other voice I heard my whole life saying, hey, motherfucker, what are you doing? Nah, man, we got to go over here. We got to go over here to that rock pile over in the fucking corner where nobody's at. That's where victory's at. And I wouldn't listen to it because over there was pain. Over there was me looking in the mirror. Over there was me being accountable for all these things that went through my life. And I didn't want to go over there by myself, but I had to. And this voice was guiding me there.
We're living in an age of addiction because addiction is, in a way, a technique for dealing with pain. There's a massive opiate crisis, and everywhere you look, every time you turn on the news, evidence of pain, evidence of people's inability to deal with the way that they are feeling.
What were you afraid of happening if you kept drinking?
I was afraid of not achieving my dreams. I was afraid of ending up a drug addict.
You're afraid you're going to die, or you're afraid you're going to become addicted. So what would have life been like for you if you were addicted? So you don't have a career anymore.
No.
Right. So you've given all that up and failed. So that's fun. That's going to drive you even more towards drugs. So why quit drinking? So I don't end up in hell. Hey, there's a reason to stop. And then if you make that hell real, here's all the details of my personal hell. Yes, let's avoid that.
Right.
So then you have something to run the hell away from. One of the things that's really freeing to understand is that you're screwed no matter what you do. There's no secure path forward. Give it up. It's risk everywhere. Oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, yes, except for two things. You can pick your risk. And second, you're a lot tougher than you think. So even though there's risk everywhere, if you confront it forthright, what you'll find is that you can actually handle the risk.
I don't care what your stupid excuse is. You know what the right decision and the wrong decision is. And the fact that you went out of your way to procure a substance to drink. You tried very hard to get it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that you're somehow a victim. That whole mentality is broken and wrong. The victim mentality that, oops, it happened to me, is the reason why it happens in the first place. You should happen to life. Life shouldn't happen to you. So you should wake up and say, no, I decide what I do with my life, and I take absolute accountability for all the actions I undertake. And every single thing that I do with my body and my mind is my conscious decision. The fact you're still framing it as in it happened to you and you had no part to play shows you've yet to learn your lesson.
If you cannot control your own mind, then you are just a feather in the wind of life. Because your own mind is the only thing you control. You can't control the weather. You can't control other people. You can't even control whether your heart stops beating. You might have a heart attack tomorrow. You can't control anything besides what you think. If you cannot control your own mind, then you go through life with zero control, zero influence. You can't control anything. You're just a feather in the wind, waiting for life to blow you from happy place to sad place to happy place to sad place.
Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, all the interim is like a phantasma or a hideous dream. And here's what these lines mean. That moment when you're waiting to do something that you don't want to do. And the first motion, so that's when you actually start doing that thing that you don't want to do. All the interim, while you are waiting to take action, is like a phantasma or a hideous dream. And so the battle, the struggle, it takes place in that moment. It's not knowing what to do. That's not the battle. It's the moment in between. It's the hesitation. Hesitation is the enemy.
If you truly decide to quit, you will quit. I think a lot of people who don't quit things haven't truly decided to. It's very easy to say that you want to do something and not do it. If I decided to quit, I really would like to quit, and then I carried on doing it. I don't think I really wanted to. If you really wanted to quit, you would quit. So there's a lot of people who are chasing the familiar feeling, and that familiar feeling can be extremely destructive. And you know what I would say is the most destructive feeling to be obsessed with trying to obtain? Happiness. So anyone who's obsessed with chasing happiness will destroy themselves. If somebody has genuinely decided to quit drugs, genuinely, I believe they would quit. And if someone goes, I don't want to quit, man, and they do it an hour later, they don't want to quit. If your image in your mind is of the kind of person who is controlled by a substance, I'd be embarrassed for a non-sentient substance, a powder or a plant, to control me. It doesn't even have a brain. And it's my boss. What am I, a dumbass?
You have to trade your bad addictions for good addictions, and that's what I did. The only cure to your addictions and your drug use and your habits is discipline. It's discipline, that's it. When you get disciplined enough through your daily process, you empower yourself. You give yourself the power to choose. When I wake up today, I don't want to do that shit. I don't want to go down that painful road again. For years, I woke up and said, never again, not today. I don't let triggers phase me because I'm strong enough. Because I wake up in the morning, my first thought is something that just empowers me. That my life is worth it, I've worked it, and then I prove it with action and build that baseline discipline up through my daily small acts. So when my weakness comes about, I don't fall victim to my own vices.
And that's because that thing in there is not dead at all. And it's activated by the cue. It's a personality. It's going to suppress any non-related thoughts, and it'll use lies. That's no problem, especially if lies have been reinforced, which they certainly have. Where are you off to, son? You'll have a lie for that, and then 10 minutes later you have your drug. You can build another circuit to shut it down, and you can help it decompose across time by not giving it what it wants. But you're going to have to not give it what it wants in all of the multiple contexts that you've already associated with the drug.
A lot of this is about your self-image. I don't know how you took drugs without feeling deep shame. You should have drunk that cup and instantly felt terrible, not because of what the narcotic did to you, because of who you were acting like. Where's your duty? Where's your shame? Where's your self-inflicting morality? Where's your pride? So that's the problem with all of this shit, and it's the problem for all these addicts. If you want to wake up and say, what kind of man am I? Am I a drug addict? Well, then go be a drug addict. What kind of man am I? Am I a man who has control of his life and control of his mind? Then I'm not a drug addict. You have to make a decision.
The cure for addiction is suffering. You suffer enough that something inside you goes undone. And I'm very lucky because I hit that point where I lost really the things that were the most important. It was not my career or money, it was my relationship with my kids. And when I felt as if it impacted them, I recognized it. It was the worst day of my life. I made amends. But since that day, I have not ever wanted to drink once.